Hey, gotcha. Hello again, football fans, and welcome to National Hearing Impairment Day. Nope, it is just a regular Wednesday. And for those of you wondering what in the wide world of sports was going on a minute ago, every now and then there are some technical difficulties. It happens to even the most mediocre of us. Welcome into another episode of Miners Live every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. We get you headed into the RFL podcast, which will kick off at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Appreciate having you along this evening. I do see some names here. I see some names in the chat already that I have not seen before. But I do see some familiar names. Anthony Fry, obviously. Rohan, my good buddy Rohan, is in here. Javier Santana, Ronnie Shanahan. Yeah, so Javier Santana and Ronnie Shanahan, of course, you can't mention one without the other. Am I the only one who feels that every single time you talk about Javier Santana, the name Ronnie Shanahan is immediately mentioned right after it? If it's in the comments, it's boom, boom. If it's in the middle of a podcast, it's, hey, this guy, hey, this guy. It's almost like these two are, you almost hope that come RFL draft, Ronnie Shanahan and Javier Santana are selected like right after each other. I think that at this point, they're both probably best case scenario, late second round players, early to mid third round picks. That's nothing to do with their talent and just everything to do with the fact that the quarterback position in the RFL right now is just overloaded. There's not a lot of need at quarterback. There's some teams that have need. There's some teams that have big need. And then there's maybe a handful of teams that don't really have need right now. They may have need in the next 2 or 3 years. And so they may select quarterbacks in this draft to help get them to that point. Some teams that have their quarterback set for next season, but they're entering a contract year. So you've got a guy with 1 year left, right? So I don't foresee there being we did the top 5 quarterbacks just a couple weeks ago. And I think if you were, once you get outside, I even think the number 5 quarterback on that list, I think if you were to take the number 5 quarterback on that list, that guy, whoever that might be, whether that's Ronnie Shanahan, whether that's Tyon, whether that's Javier Santana, whether that's Cinco, whoever it might be, whoever you might have. And I'll go over what you guys think a little bit later on too, because I did put out the community poll for you guys to take part in, the top 5 quarterbacks and top 5 running backs community vote, basically where you guys had the opportunity. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, go into the RFL Discord and go to the debate channel. And in the debate channel, you will see that I have posted the community poll for you to go in and vote. So just like you saw last week or the week before, where we had the coaches poll, which we'll get to in about, what do we got? About 5 minutes. We'll get to the week 7 coaches poll. But just like we had the coaches poll, we are also going to have the top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 running backs, top 5 wide receivers, which we already had for coaches to vote on. Right. But now I'm giving you guys the opportunity to get involved in that. So that'll be interesting and exciting for you guys. And again, go to the debate channel on Discord and you will be able to check that out and you'll be able to take part in those. So the quarterback one and the running back one for you guys to vote on is already up and already in there. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But the week 7 coaches poll will be unveiled at, let's see, 7:15. As always, 7:15, we will get the coaches poll. And so before we go and do that, I did want to pull up last week's week 6, right? We'll pull up the week 6 coaches poll to give you guys a look back at where we were here. So The week 6 coaches poll right here. 6 through 10, we had the Texas Longhorns, Maryland Terrapins, West Virginia Mountaineers, Baylor Bears in at number 9, and Georgia Bulldogs in at number 10. Now, the Baylor Bears and Georgia Bulldogs are an interesting case study. One thing that I found very interesting about these two teams is that they're not getting a lot of run right now. They're not getting a lot of pub, but I think both of them have a chance to really play spoiler, right? And so if you saw earlier on, if you saw the show agenda that I put out earlier, you saw the spoiler alert tab there. Georgia, Baylor, and Oregon are 3 teams that I feel between now and the end of the season, they're going to do one of 2 things. They're either going to, 1, make a run at the Final Four, or 2, they're going to play spoiler for some of the other teams that are making a run or might eventually make the Final Four. Because Georgia, Baylor, and Oregon are all kind of under the radar, not getting a lot of attention, never being mentioned in the top 5 teams in the country, but yet one week they will go out and they will just absolutely dominate. And you can't help but think to yourself, wow, if only this Baylor Bears team could show offense like this on a consistent basis. Wow, if only this Oregon defense could perform like this on a consistent basis. Wow, if only this Georgia offense could put up offensive numbers like this on a regular basis. But mark my words, between now and the end of the season, those 3 teams are going to play spoiler alert. Take a look at the schedule. Deep into SEC play, Georgia's going to play spoiler against somebody. Baylor, they might already be playing spoiler. You can make an argument that maybe Baylor doesn't even deserve to be recognized as a spoiler, because if you think about it, they might be the front runner to face TCU in the Big 12 championship. You can make that argument. Right now, the top 25 would disagree with you. The Texas Longhorns playing great football. But there's a case to be made for Baylor. Just like there's a case to be made for Georgia. Alabama getting a lot of run in the SEC. Some people want to talk about LSU. I still think LSU is nothing but a bunch of paper champions, right? They're not doing anything. They're somehow winning games, not looking fantastic in any one area. And then Oregon. I think the Pac-12 is wide open. Oregon, Washington, USC. Any one of those teams could come out. Right? So last week's coaches poll, you saw 6 through 10, again, Texas, Maryland, West Virginia, Baylor, and Georgia. And then the top 5 was Ohio State, TCU, USC, Miami, and Alabama. All right. So Ohio State, TCU, USC, Miami, and Alabama. There was a lot of controversy, a lot of talk, a lot of chatter about Miami dropping to 4. Why is Miami 4 and USC 3 when Miami's undefeated? USC has a loss. You know, what's the difference between Miami and TCU? Why is TCU at 2, Miami's at 4? Why is Miami 5-0 at 4 and Ohio State 4-0 at 1? Like there's plenty of conversation to be had down in South Florida. And so we'll get a chance here in just a moment to look at what the week 7 coaches poll looks like. But before we do that, I want to take a quick moment to go out to the chat, see if there's anything in here that I'm missing. Yeah, so here's one from Darius Hodge right here. Need to see Baylor versus Texas. Absolutely. Look, I don't, if you aren't excited for Baylor versus Texas, then I don't know what is going to get you up in the morning, right? So Baylor versus Texas, we're looking at that game in week 8. We're only a week away. And by God, if Baylor goes out this week against West Virginia and picks up the W against West Virginia, imagine what that game against Texas is going to look like then. There it is, Monday night at 8:30 for those of you guys that didn't see. The weekly college series schedule has been posted, so be sure to check that out. But Monday night, 8:30, the last game of the week. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger. In case you were completely unaware, the Monday night 8:30 game is like the primest of prime. It is the filet mignon of college series, the college series weekend. Right? So must see TV Monday night, 8:30, the Baylor Bears and the Texas Longhorns. And the winner of that game is next in line in the Big 12 if something were to happen to TCU. All right. So without any further ado, I've stalled, I've delayed, I've teased it long enough. I'm going to go ahead and get you right into the coaches poll for week 7. Right. So again, just to refresh, this is the coaches poll that is decided upon by coaches and coaches only, not one person, not me, not Smitty, not Mitch, not Rob, collective coaches. This week, I believe we had 6 coaches. There was a couple that were unable to get them in time. So you will notice that the point totals for some of these teams are a little bit lower. But the collective coaches poll for week 7. And again, this is the coaches poll. The official RFL top 25 will come out tonight. Smitty will have that on the RFL podcast. Again, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time for that show. But the week 7 coaches poll starts right here. Coming in at number 6, remaining number 6, the Texas Longhorns. Making the jump all the way from number 10 to number 7 is the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 8, we have the Oregon Ducks making the jump. Obviously, Oregon fresh off of the big upset over the Ohio State Buckeyes. So we'll have to see where Ohio State falls. The North Carolina Tar Heels also work their way back into the top 10. They come in at number 9. And then the Maryland Terrapins drop down to number 10 with a total of 8 points there. Now, I will say there was a tie between Maryland and Baylor. Baylor is not on this list. Now, what's interesting, it's a little unfortunate for them, and this is where you have to think that having the bye week, not playing, cost Baylor here, because there were 10 in week 6 on the coaches poll. They did not play and they fall off. Now they barely fell off. They had exactly 8 points. Maryland had 8 points. The reason why Maryland got the tiebreak is because Maryland received a higher vote, the highest rank vote. So I guess Maryland received a vote for 6th in the country. And the highest vote that Baylor received was for 8th in the country, if that makes any sense. So there was one coach out there that voted Maryland as the number 6 team in the country. And that was higher than any one coach voted Baylor. So Maryland had that 5 points for that one coach, and then 3 points from another coach that had voted them as 8th. Baylor, on the other hand, had 3 coaches vote for them in, but all a little bit later. One of them was 7th, one of them was 8th, and one of them was 10th. Now, you can make the argument either way, but because Maryland had the highest individual slot rank, they got the tiebreak. So that coach's rank was basically the reason why Maryland got in. And again, it's tough because Baylor had 3 coaches put them in the top 10. Maryland only had 2 coaches put them in the top 10. But at the end of the day, none of this really matters if you're a fan of the Baylor Bears. Do not take this hard. You guys didn't play. You have a chance this week against West Virginia to go out there and get the job done. And I can almost assure you that if Baylor beats West Virginia, that they will find their way back into the top 10, and not only find their way back into the top 10, but probably higher than 10. Okay, so 6 through 10, Texas, Georgia, Oregon, North Carolina, and Maryland. And then a quick look at the top 5. So the top 5 here, a little bit of shakeup. You saw on the agenda what in the wide world of sports is going on here. A lot of movement in the last 3 weeks in the coaches poll. Certainly with the controversy last week with Miami being at 4, but now the top 5 for week 7, TCU up to number 1. Miami jumps from number 4 to number 2. USC stays pat at number 3. And then there is Ohio State falling from number 1 all the way down to number 4. Now there's some conversation that might be had here, and I'll go to the chat here real quick and see what we've got going on. There's probably some conversation. Why didn't Ohio State fall further? There's probably conversation. Why isn't Miami number 1? There could be some conversation. What's going on with Alabama? Alabama is like cruise control in your car. That's what Alabama is right now in the college series. Pecan, you can make an argument for TCU number 1. Does somebody want to tell him, or should I tell him? I'll let you guys tell him. Alabama is like cruise control in your car, right? You can pretty much just set it and forget it. For those of you familiar with the old Ronco fried chicken convection oven there, what was that stupid slogan? Set it and forget it. Oh, he meant the actual RFL poll. Well, you need to clarify, son. Of course, TCU is going to be at number 1. If they're not, then the coaches poll, then the top 25 is just wrong. If Smitty's listening, Smitty, if you've got Miami at number 1 and TCU at number 2 in the top 25 later tonight, it's just wrong. It's just wrong. I mean, objectively, it's wrong. TCU has to be number 1. They're the only 2 undefeated teams, and I don't know anyone who's going to make the argument that doesn't play for Miami that they look like the better team. And now look, the gap is not large. In the coaches poll here, we're talking about 4 points. And I'd be curious, what the conversation was in the actual top 25, but the gap is very slim. But again, in order for Miami to close that gap and surpass TCU, they're going to have to go out and do something spectacular. And they haven't done anything spectacular since week 1. 3 weeks in a row, you can make the argument that they should have lost. You can make an argument that Miami could very easily and should quite possibly be 3-3. You can't say that about TCU. Maybe you can take 1 game away. And if you really want to spend some time dissecting it, maybe you can find a second game in there to take away from TCU. But Miami's had 3 games that everybody watching thought they were going to lose, trailing late in the fourth quarter. This is just an incorrect statement. Like, Miami's defense is fantastic. But that's just not, it's borderline blasphemous. And I would expect nothing less from somebody who's an alum of the school. But again, I challenge anyone who didn't go to Miami to say that. All right, well, here you go. I kind of agree. How? What is it that Miami's defense, like, I mean, give me a break here, guys. I don't like doing this. I don't like making people look foolish. It's not fun for me. But you don't really give me much of a choice when we're sitting here talking about Miami against Texas A&M. Like, what are we talking about here? Miami, I'm not even going to say almost. I'm going to say should have lost to Texas A&M. Should have lost to Louisville. And then Clemson is a bona fide team in the ACC. I've said on this program that I think Clemson is a sleeper, and they're a team that could, make some run in the ACC, potentially play Miami again in the ACC championship. I think Clemson could be that team. But what in the wide world of sports are you talking about if you think that Miami, who struggled until 2 late fourth quarter touchdowns from Hodge against Texas A&M, or maybe that was the Louisville game. The Texas A&M game was even worse. The Louisville game, they were home. Like, these are 2 home games. And fortunately for Miami, the schedule the rest of the way is pretty favorable. The hardest game they have is the final week of the season at Baylor. But if they look the way they looked against A&M, Louisville, and Clemson, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost this week to North Carolina. Now, again, if they beat North Carolina, there's a good chance they run the table. And that's fine. Miami can run the table all they want. As a matter of fact, if Miami runs the table and TCU stumbles against West Virginia or Baylor or Alabama and they lose a close game, fine. You want to put Miami at number 1 going into the Final Four? That's fine. But I'm not at this point comfortable in any way, shape, or form telling you guys that, or suggesting to you guys that Miami is going to, I mean, the wording of the phrase was ridiculous. The context was that they're going to stop TCU. You guys need to be really careful with your words, because you make a statement that says Miami's defense shuts down TCU's offense. And it's just wrong. And even if Miami wins the game 28-27, your statement is still wrong. If Miami beats TCU 28-27, Miami's defense did not shut down TCU's offense. Miami's offense just scored more points. So if you want to make the claim that Miami could beat TCU, fine. Of course they can. No one's going to argue that they could beat them. Just like no one's going to argue Texas A&M could have beat Miami. But to make the statement that Miami's defense shuts down TCU, they couldn't shut down Louisville. And Lamar Jackson's been gone for 4 years. I just don't understand how I've never in my life seen a team that was so highly regarded find something to whine about. I've never seen the number 2 team in the country or number 3 team in the country on a regular basis. Listen, Miami has been a top 3 team every single week for 2 seasons. 2 years. 2 years. Miami has been a top 3, not top 10, not top 25. For 2 whole years, you've been a top 3 team. You've always been the number 1 team in your conference. Nobody has ever questioned that. Everyone has always said you're the number 1 team in your conference and you're one of the 3 best teams in the entire league. And it wasn't good enough. If it's not good enough, then be better. Don't come on this program or any other show and whine about someone's thoughts and opinions when it's not just one person. You can sit here and listen to me and think that it's just me. It's not. You ever have a situation where you've got 4 or 5 of your friends and you guys hang out all the time, right? You guys hang out on the weekends all the time, talk to each other, hang out during the week. And suddenly one day, one of your friends comes up to you and he points something out and he says something to you and he's like, you know what, man, I really wish that you didn't talk to me the way that you talk to me. You might not think anything of it. But then a week later, one of the other buddies in your circle comes up to you and he says the same thing. And you still might not think anything of it. You may be like, I don't know what these guys are talking about. Like, I don't think that I'm talking disrespectful to them. I don't think I'm saying anything mean or rude or whatever. But then all of a sudden, a third person, you've got 5 people in the group, and now you're one of them. There's 4 other people in the group, and now a third person in the group comes up and says the same thing. How long before you stop, take a moment, reflect, look in the mirror, and realize, you know what? Maybe I need to do some self-reflecting here. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am doing something wrong, doing something that they don't like, doing something that they don't appreciate. When do you get to that point? Because this is you right now, Miami. This is you. When are you going to get to that point? You are in a circle of friends, and maybe last year, somewhere in the middle of the season, one of those friends came to you and said something about your team being overrated. And then you lost in the playoff. And then maybe one of your other friends came and said the same thing. And now here we are a year later. And now another friend might be coming up saying the same thing. At what point do you stop and look in the mirror and just say, you know what? Maybe I need to tweak something. Just because someone doesn't agree with your opinion doesn't mean they're whining. 100% correct. That is not debatable. That is an accurate statement. Just because someone doesn't agree with your opinion doesn't mean they're whining. You're right. What means you're whining is when nothing is ever good enough and you complain about everything that's given to you. When you're called the number 2 team in the country, you don't enjoy it. You don't appreciate it. You complain about not being number 1. When someone says your quarterback is struggling and he's not a top 5, not a top 10 quarterback, and he's not playing well, you don't accept it and try to move forward with it and accept your limitations. You complain about it and try to defend it and say, well, he threw 3 touchdowns in one game. Yeah, but he threw 4 interceptions. There's always a defense or there's always a complaint. Regardless, that's the whining. I enjoy you not agreeing with my opinion. Heck, each and every one of you appreciates me. And when you don't agree with my opinion, that's why you guys are here. That's why you enjoy the show. What else we got in here? All right, here we go. What's Pecan got here? I'm going to put this one up. The first time someone calls you a horse, you call him a jerk. The second time someone calls you a horse, you punch him in the nose. The third time, well, I guess it's time to go buy a saddle. I mean, I've never heard that one before. I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard that one before. But sure. Right? And again, it's 100% all love. But the point behind all of this, and I got to come up with a name for this segment because this is it right here. Your word selection is just atrocious. I've never seen such poor selection of vocabulary to be used in a statement in my life. If this comment, if Lito Loso said, it's all love, done, but we will beat TCU. Okay. That's confidence. I like it. The number 2 team in the country thinks they can beat the number 1 team in the country. Well, they should. But when you say we're going to smack TCU, what is your definition of smack TCU? Because I really think that if Miami wins the game 28-27, that we're going to have palm trees in the chat for a month saying we smacked TCU when they play again in the Final Four. Remember that time we smacked TCU? No one does. No one remembers it because it never happened. You can win the game. Fine. In order for Miami to smack TCU, they'd have to win by like 17. And if that happens, fine. I'll invite each and every palm tree on the show. I'll call you a bunch of palm tree huggers. That's what I should start calling Miami. The palm tree huggers. Right? Because that's where we've gotten. You might not want to agree that it's whining, but it I mean, what else is it? You're the number 2 team in the country? No. We are number 1. This is unacceptable. This is ridiculous. Dunn is a moron. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Smitty, Bill, Mix, forget it. Who cares? Guys get muted in the chats because they're defending their stance when they're the number 2 team in the country and don't understand why they're not number 1. Guys are getting muted because they're getting so on tilt and so heated about it. How is 10 points not a smacking? Are you serious? Have you ever watched a football game? 10 points is not a smacking. 10 points is a win. A smacking doesn't even, you can't use the term smacking until you've at least gotten 2 touchdowns. And furthermore, let's give it some context. Don't tell me that being up by 3 with a minute left and the other team driving throws a pick 6 and you run it back for a touchdown and you win by 10 Don't you dare come on this show and tell me that's smacking. You're up by 3 and the other team's driving and you get a pick 6. What are you talking about? That statement right there is almost as blasphemous as Lito's initial one. I'm just going to call this show the SmackDown show because everybody wants to use the term smacking. That's right, Darius. I did. I called you palm tree huggers. That's what you are. Because you're like this little cult, which is what this little, like, I shouldn't say cult, culture, right? This culture of people. And that's what you are. You're palm tree huggers. 2 possessions is nothing, especially in college. That's fine, but I will give Miami the benefit of the doubt if they win a game by 14 or they win a game by 16 or 17 points. I'm going to say, yeah, okay. But again, I need context. I think that game against A&M or the game against Louisville, I think they ended up winning the game by 14. How dare you tell me that they smacked them? They should have lost. I think they got a turnover in the last 3 minutes. They got 2 touchdowns. That's not smacking at all. You can make an argument they were the inferior team for 3 3/4 of the game. But good teams find a way to win close games. And they did that. That's fine. No one's taking that away from them. But we're not going to sit here and climb Mount Everest and plant a Miami Hurricanes flag because they came back in the 4th quarter against a terrible team. 2 of those 3 teams are garbage. Apologies to anyone at Louisville, Texas A&M. Sorry, Anthony Fry. And Clemson was a hard-fought game. There it is. Hashtag palm tree huggers. I'm going to get to some of these new comments here in a minute, but I do want to get back to a couple things here. So I have gone over with you guys the top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 running backs. And so I wanted to give an opportunity to go over some of the defensive guys. Oh boy. No, were you not listening? This is I cabron. I can't do this anymore. Does somebody want to tell him? Or do I have to tell him? I literally defined it when you made the last ridiculous comment. A smacking, you can win by, if you win by 14, you want to give me some context? Okay. Do you think, like, when are you just looking at box scores? Is that all you're doing? You look at a box score and you say, wow, that team beat the crap out of the other team because they won by double digits. You can't make those statements. Yes, thank you. In the name of all things sacred, Ronnie Shanahan, that is a Mackey award-winning comment right there. A smacking is 28-0. That is a smacking. If you have to think about whether or not it's a smacking, it's not. Oh, you weren't talking to me. Well, you got roasted anyway. So is the breaks. If you're going to throw comments up during the show, I'm going to anticipate 9 times out of 10 that they are directed towards me. And so be prepared to get roasted. Got to be 4 touchdowns. No. All right. So I want to take a moment to talk about some of the guys on the defensive side of the ball. Because I know that we talk a lot about offense, and I did the coaches' top 5 RFL draft prospects for quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. And the next list, the next coaches rank that I'm going to be sending out to the guys is defensive linemen. So we're going to be starting some defense in the next one. But I also wanted to take a moment to talk about some contributors on the defensive side of the ball from the linebacker position. Because I was looking over some stuff, looking over some stats earlier today, and came across some things that were interesting. A lot of high-profile guys out there, linebackers, getting a lot of run, getting a lot of pub, highly regarded when it comes to the draft, and we'll see what the coaches' ranks look like. And I will put the community poll together for linebackers as well and defensive linemen as well. So you guys will have the opportunity to vote on who you think the top 5 linebackers are in the country, the top 5 defensive linemen are in the country, again, in terms of draft prospects. But I did want to take a moment to go over some linebackers. And the key thing with linebackers, you want guys that can make tackles, right? I think when you look at a linebacker, yeah, if you got a linebacker that has a few interceptions, well, that's great. But that's kind of like icing on the cake, right? Like that's not to be expected. You don't expect linebackers to have 4, 5, 6 interceptions. And at the RFL level, when you get to the pro level, that's not going to happen. Right. And if you do, it's an outlier. It's definitely not the norm. Right. When you're evaluating linebackers, excuse me, you want guys that can wrap up tackles, make tackles, stop running backs, stop wide receivers in the open field, and don't always necessarily need the help of other people. Right. So I think tackles for linebackers is very important. It's probably the number 1 carrying stat for the linebacker position, right? When you look at measuring through statistics, the linebacker position, the first stat that you're going to look for is tackles. No one is going to look at which linebacker led the country in interceptions and say, "Ooh, this is the best linebacker in the country because he had more interceptions than any other linebacker." Nobody does that. Unless that same linebacker also was somewhere in the top ranks when it comes to tackles, right? Like you can't be 75th in the country in tackles, but have 4 interceptions, lead the nation, and have a respectable scout say to you, "Hey man, you're the best linebacker in the country." That doesn't happen. Right. So I wanted to take a moment and look at some linebackers. And so here's a look so far through week 6. Through week 6, we have the linebackers and I have the stat leaders for tackles. Right. So here it is right here. This is after 6 weeks, the top 5 linebackers in the country in terms of total number of tackles. Now, when you look at the list, you will see next to their name, you will see for Don Watts, for example, 37, 39, 76. That is 37 solo tackles, 39 combined tackles, assisted tackles, if you will, for a total of 76 overall tackles. Right. And so the thing that I want to point out on this list is that there are some names on here that you don't hear a lot about. Right. And I guess I'll just throw out some guys at Baylor. Right. There's a few guys at Baylor who everybody wants to talk about. Everybody seems to be talking about the 3-headed monster at Baylor. But not a lot of people are talking about Chico Canetti at Wisconsin. Not a lot of people are talking about Imani Adams at Florida. Maybe there's some people talking about Tyler Cage, but that's probably because he has 4 interceptions and 2 of them are brought back for touchdowns. Not a lot of people are talking about Don Watts at Georgia. And I can promise you, not a lot of people are talking about my next guest here on the show, and that is the middle linebacker for the TCU Horned Frogs, the number 1 team in the country as voted on by the coaches. Giovanni Diggs, welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am good. What are you sitting on the swing set there?
Oh yeah, sitting on the porch enjoying the cool air. It's been so humid out here. I had to chop all this off.
You cut your hair?
Yeah, I shaved it. It was getting too hot. Felt like I
When
was
did you do
swimming
that?
when I walked outside.
When did you do that?
Uh, Yesterday. Yeah,
Oh, you just did it.
yeah, I just did it. I think I'm gonna keep it
Did,
like that though.
did you do it yourself?
Yeah, I buzzed it and then took a razor to it.
Did you get any advice or any tips from Mitch? Did you consult with Mitch at all before you got your haircut? Because I don't know if you were watching the show a few weeks back, but we had Mitch on and he was going to get his haircut and we tried to get him to do it live on the show. I wish that you had told me that you were going to be shaving your head. I would have told you to wait until today. You could have gone out on the front porch and sat on the swing set and shaved your head for all the fans at Miners Live.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, actually, the wife had to help me get some of it, and man, it was probably the scariest thing ever. I was saying, "Whoa,
Shaving your
slow
head?
down." Yes, back some of it, making sure I got it all going over it. She went over it, and I said, "Slow down, stop. This ain't your legs. You're gonna tear a chunk out of me."
So let me ask you this question. If you weren't married, you didn't have a wife, would you have done this? Would you have taken on this endeavor without having the support of someone there to make sure that you didn't rip your skull off?
I think I still would have done it. I mean, I had it done in the military a long time ago, and you know, I didn't care for it back then, but I really don't care too much what people think now. So I probably still would have done it. I don't leave the house too much, so it's not like I'm going to embarrass myself in public.
So when was the last time that you shaved your head completely?
2013 when I put myself through the police academy.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about TCU here. I put that graphic up showing the stat leaders, right,
Mm-hmm.
for all linebackers, middle linebackers, and outside linebackers here. And there you can see yourself there at number 3, 73 total tackles. More assisted tackles um, than solo tackles, but that's to be expected. It's very rare to see a guy with more solo tackles. Obviously, in the case of Amani Adams, there right above you, you do see that. But what are your thoughts on? I guess what is your approach to the linebacker position? And I guess tell us a little bit about when you built your linebacker. If you can think back to your linebacker, what were the important attributes that you wanted to boost up for your player?
And I've been in here since January of 21. So thinking back, I picked the number 52 because I'm a big Bears fan. So that number went for that. But I wanted to build a guy kind of like a Luke Kuechly type
Yeah,
deal. And
yeah.
he
Why not? If you're gonna build a middle linebacker, why not build him like arguably one of the best, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I wanted him to kind of stay back a little bit. I'm not, you can tell from my play, I don't really rush the quarterback too much and get the sacks. Um, Last year I had a bunch of the pass deflections and stone hands. I just had to pick one up off the ground a couple weeks ago, so that's fine by me. And like you said, the solo tackles, all that's cool and stuff. But what helps me with my stuff is actually having the help this year. With the people we brought in and the solo or the assist. I credit a lot of them with that. If they didn't stop them, I can get over there to help or slow them down, and gives me time to run from one side of the field to the other to make the tackle. It's all good. And like I've said before, everybody coming in this year has got great chemistry, and everybody on this team has improved, I think, drastically this year. So it's a good group of guys, and everybody's shining. So
Yeah, I would certainly agree. I don't think there's anyone that can argue with the fact that this year's TCU team is much better than last year's TCU team. That's kind of an obvious statement. Um, but it is nice to see that you guys have that good rapport, good chemistry. I'm looking at the build here, and the 99 attribute was play recognition.
Mhm.
which I do appreciate for a linebacker, right? Especially a middle linebacker. You want your guy to be able to recognize whether it's a run, whether it's a pass, if it's play action, what the pass routes might be, if it's a quick slot receiver coming over the middle. So play recognition is going to help there. I really like the 90 hit power because I firmly believe that when I look at linebackers, I want my linebackers to have the um, big hitter. So in Madden, there's the big hitter trait, and I like my linebackers to have that big hitter trait. Um, and so I think that when these builds are being made for the draft, guys that have 90 hit power, or if anyone has 99 hit power, they're probably going to get that big hitter trait. The guys with 80 or maybe even 85 hit power, they might not get that big hitter trait. I also like speed. You got 85 speed there. I've gone on the record. I want my linebackers at minimum to have 85 speed. I like fast linebackers, right? So it's nice to see you got 85 speed there.
Yeah, I went with the speed. That way, it fit a little bit better. Whether I went to a team that was a 4-3 or a 3-4, so it worked out both ways. And I wanted to have a kind of middle ground there, and I thought 85 was a good medium for that.
So you bring up a good question then here. In terms of a 3-4 or a 4-3, do you have a preference, right? Like, forget about TCU right now, because at the end of the day, what everyone's really interested in and what coaches are interested in is your production at the pro level. Do you have a preference as to what style defense you would like to play in, a 3-4 or a 4-3?
I personally, I like 4-3. I like being able to stop the run, but I think I'll thrive wherever I get put. The coaches in this league are smart enough to move guys around to what's going to not just best benefit their player, but benefit the team overall. So I trust the coach's decision when it comes to that. And as long as I'm in a position to make plays, whether it's on uh, the inside or if I get moved to the outside, I'm fine with that too. So
Right.
as long as I'm maxing out what I can do on the field and making the most of the opportunities and helping the team win, I'm happy.
All right. I'm going to give you a couple quick on the spot rapid fire questions here. Who is the best quarterback in the country that is not named Miles McCain?
I want to say the one everybody's been saying, but what's his name? Oh,
We got Tajay Gaddy, Monty Wyatt, Calvin Poole.
I want to say Poole, but I've watched the shows and everybody's got their justifications for going Miles over that. But if Miles isn't an option, then yeah, Poole. I'll go Poole.
Who's the better wide receiver, Devontre Sharkley or Amari Harris?
I'm not. I don't want to seem like it's shade or anything like that. No, so don't take it that way. But just from last year,
I don't think either one of these guys are going to approach you in the locker room and try to start a fight with a 6-foot, 240-pound middle linebacker. I think you're good. Although Sharkley's a big boy.
I think, to me, putting in perspective last year's play and this year, I've always thought Sharkley edged Amari out a little bit, just because it seemed like to me, especially last year, if Amari didn't break him off the line, then it wasn't going. And to me, Jaws is a little bit more diversified, I guess. He can get the deep ball, he can make the run, but he can hit the slant too. Um, so I'd probably say Jaws still, but Amari, man, he's a burner, dude. If he gets you off the line, there you ain't catching him.
All right, and then I'll get you out of here with a really difficult one. This is one for all the coaches out there, all the RFL coaches that are watching this. What can what can we do? What can the community do, or what can you do to show scouts and coaches that you are committed and active and all that stuff moving forward?
Uh, what can I do personally? I mean, I can always put a little bit more time into watching more games and stuff, but that's everybody. But me personally, the way I view it is, I've listened to some of the shows, and they've talked about activity is good, but one thing coaches have to look at as well is these guys like me and the other guys that were here since season one. I mean, not season one, but last year.
Right.
Last season, season three, and and are still here. I mean, like I said, I may not be as active in the chat, but I've got some military issue stuff where I don't. It's best I don't, because I might read something the wrong way and take it the wrong way, and text. People always read it the wrong way, and I've had stuff read wrong, and it's taken like it shouldn't be, and it just causes drama or
Oh yeah.
conflict that shouldn't be. So it's just best that I kind of steer clear of that and focus on my team and what the team wants to do, and my guys. And that's my main thing is, just because somebody's not active, pay attention to that too. The fact that we've sat here since January of 21, and I haven't played it down of the pros.
But you're still here.
I'm still here through the off season, and,
Yep.
I'm back here. I'm still here. I paid again. I'm still here. So look at that too. The guy that may not be as active in that, but is going to be active in your locker room at least, and is going to stick through the duration and the downtimes, because a lot of us stayed through that big dead time while the pro season was going on, and we're still here. So, and being
Right.
the first group to have to sit through 2 college series, I mean, it speaks volume about the commitment to the league, even if they don't have the time. Because, like I said, I'm doing homeschooling with the kids. I've got 4 kids, and I've got plenty on my plate at home too. But I'm trying to manage everything. And COVID, like I was active last year, really good. Uh, got hit with some stuff. I got some PTSD issues, and they switched my medicine, and I went into a big depression thing for about a month, and I came back, and then I had the COVID got hit, and then it was just all that stuff. And like I said, if you pour too much into it, you got to find a happy medium, because you can burn yourself out and need to take a couple weeks off anyway. I'm sure the coaches are ready for a couple weeks off after the season's done. So
For sure.
so
100%.
that's
100%.
my word.
100% agree. I appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate the the commitment and the activity. And you bring up a really good point. There is something to be said about guys that are here for the second season, because it is a bit of a grind during the off season when you know that you're not playing at the pro level yet. So great point by you there, Giovanni. And if you ever have any questions, ever need to talk or anything, feel free to reach out. I'm always available. I'm always around. And thanks again for coming on the show, man.
Well, thanks for having me. And go TCU.
All right, buddy. We'll take care. See ya. All right, Giovanni Diggs, middle linebacker for the number 1 team in the country, the TCU Horned Frogs. Great guy there. Great dude. I hadn't really had much opportunity to talk to him previously. But I think it is important to give opportunity to some of the guys that, might not be as active, but are around and are involved. We've got a group of almost 300 guys here, and maybe 200 of them are user submitted, and maybe 100 of them are active regularly. But that doesn't mean that the other 100 guys aren't interested and committed. Anthony Fry, for example, will tell you he has real life stuff that gets in the way a lot, but he's around. All the coaches will tell you, there is real world stuff, and obviously those things take priority. And as you heard Diggs talk about there, some real world, some difficult real world stuff for him. And all the credit in the world to him for being able to talk about that on air, to come on the show. I had no idea. I did not know any of that. I did not know that he was going to talk about that. I didn't know that existed for him in his life. But I think that's a huge feather in his cap and a huge step forward in the recovery process. And all of that for those people who have those issues. And so good for him for coming on and mentioning that and giving us all a little bit of perspective and being comfortable talking about that with a bunch of people that he doesn't even know, right? Like there's probably a lot of us here that most of us don't know him on a personal level, other than we all love the RFL and we all love the college series. So credit to Giovanni Diggs there for coming on. A point of clarification here. This is interesting. So I've always been genuinely curious about this. And so here it is straight from the commissioner's office. Hit power is not guaranteed even if you have 99. It all depends on how much you actually display it. So for those of you wondering what we're talking about here, so in Madden, there is a hard hitter trait. And the hard hitter trait, oftentimes, if you have the hard hitter trait, it seems like guys are more likely to go for the hit stick, right? Even AI guys, right? Even in simulation, if guys have the hard hitter trait, it seems like they will more frequently attempt a hit stick. Now that leads to some missed tackles, and it also leads to maybe a couple extra forced fumbles. And so I like linebackers that have the hard hitter trait. And the difficult thing for us as coaches, and maybe Smitty, if you're still watching, if there was a way when we're going through the combine and the draft process to know some of those traits, I think that would be largely beneficial. And maybe that's something that it isn't capable of being done, but for this year's draft because it's only a couple months away. But I think on the defensive side of the ball, guys who have that hard hitter trait is certainly, if you know that a linebacker entering the draft is going to have that trait, I think that, if you like that trait, that could potentially bump that player up 2 or 3 spots on your draft board. If you don't like that trait because you're afraid it leads to a lot of missed tackles and you'd rather a guy with just solid overall tackling ability, wrap up tackling, and that's more what you're looking for in your defense, then maybe that would potentially come down a little bit or just not matter to you. And so it is interesting though that the submitted attribute rank for hit power doesn't really impact what that will potentially look like at the pro level. And it's more about what they've done on the field. So basically what Smitty's saying here is if you're watching games and you see a middle linebacker and every week he lays out a vicious hit stick, chances are that guy's probably going to get heavy hitter. Then you could go and look at his submitted attributes and you see that, his hit power isn't even a submitted attribute, or it is, and it's only 85. Basically, you could have a 99, you could have a middle linebacker with 90 hit power, but he doesn't display hit sticks on the field, or he doesn't have a lot of big hits on the field, and he might not get it, but a guy with 85 might. So something that we have to keep an eye on if that's important to you. But yeah, so just wanted to throw that out there for clarification purposes from Smitty. Here's even more. So these are a little bit behind. The high hit power means you have the potential to land a big hit. The hard hitter trait is the frequency in which you are successful. You don't get to know the traits either. That's what you scout for. So, that's unfortunate, right? Like as coaches, we would love to know if a guy is going to have that trait. I think in scouting and in watching the games, it can be a little bit subjective. I could certainly watch the same game as any other coach, and I could watch a player and feel like that guy's laying out hits and that guy's going to get, um, the big hitter trait, but some other coach might not. And certainly Smitty might not, right? And so it's just kind of all the more reason why we have to pay as close attention as possible to these games. Little things like that, right? So, um, again, special shout out to Giovanni Diggs for coming on the show. I want to take a moment here and get back to the comments here in the chat. What do we got? I did see something. So where did it go? Rohan, if you're as you're starring these, the ones that are really, really old, unstar them so I can find the ones that are really important, because I'm looking at like 50 of them in here. Yeah, 1-2 is interchangeable. Yeah, the Miami TCU thing. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse here. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. Stop. I can't see anything. Let's see, 45-7. What am I looking at? Oh, I think you deleted half the ones that I was going to. Oh, well. All right. So I saw one in there. It was in regards to the defensive players. So two of the names that you don't see on here are Daniel Silverio, Alvin Mack. Actually, in a third name, if you want to even throw out Killian Bain again at Baylor. I think the Baylor linebackers get a lot of run. A lot of people talk about Baylor's linebacking core. None of those guys on this list. Right? So it just goes to show you that, activity is great and production is great. But when you look at a guy like Giovanni Diggs, right? He's got the production, certainly, but maybe the activity is not quite as high. Right? So you kind of have to find that balance. Do you want a guy that is 100% commitment, activity, go, rah, rah, the biggest RFL cheerleader, but has, maybe middle of the pack production? Or do you want a guy that has supreme high level production and just isn't quite as active, as you might wish or expect? Right. And so those are all things that as coaches, we have to look at. So if any of you guys ever have any questions about anything, your activity level, what coaches are looking for, reach out. Like I'm an open book. If you guys ever want to ask me a question, by all means, I'm wide open for questions. But ask other coaches, right? Like, don't feel that you need to constantly ask the same coach. There are a lot of coaches. So be sure to reach out. We're getting that much closer to the draft. And so it's going to be super important for you guys to know where you stand and know what coaches are looking for. And then real quick, before we get out of here, because the RFL podcast will be going live in a little bit here, I did want to pull up the feedback and responses that you guys provided. Probably try to go through this in a quick 5 minutes here. If I can pull this up. Some of these I had to delete because they were just absolutely ridiculous. And I don't think I can share it now. Let's see. I think I can. Oh, here we go. Top 5 quarterbacks. Did it come up? Yeah. So here we go. So I don't know. Let's see if I can remove this. These are the top 5 quarterbacks based on your votes. There were 74 total responses. So 74 of you guys participated in this top 5 quarterbacks as voted on by you, the RFL community. 37%, basically 38%, said Miles McCain was the number one quarterback. 26% said Calvin Poole. 19 total votes for Calvin Poole, 28 votes for Miles McCain. One thing that I will say here, the early polls had Miles McCain running away with this one. At one point, I believe there were about 25 or 35 responses, and Miles McCain had about 60% of the QB1 vote. And that changed dramatically as more and more results came through. You saw it start to level out a little bit more, Calvin Poole versus Miles McCain. In terms of quarterback 2, it gets a little interesting. That's where you see Tajay Gaddy's name pop in. He had 15 total votes as QB2. Miles McCain got some. Calvin Poole got a bunch. And then Monty Wyatt. So it's really interesting. It almost seems like there's a back and forth between Calvin Poole and Miles McCain at QB1, and then Tajay Gaddy and Monty Wyatt at QB2. And if you lump all 4 of those guys together, I mean, it becomes personal preference, right? Like, which guy do you like more if you're a coach and you're looking for a quarterback? And then we get down here. Tajay Gaddy with some of the other guys here. Javier Santana with 8 votes for QB4. Also got 4 votes for QB3. Jet Blade got some votes here for QB4. And then as you see down here, QB5, there's just a gigantic wheel of diversity here when it comes to the 5th quarterback. One thing you notice here is Javier Santana got 12 votes as QB5. That's more than double what any other quarterback got for QB5. So I think that's rather interesting in that it appears as though the top 4 quarterbacks are Calvin Poole, Miles McCain, Monty Wyatt, and Tajay Gaddy, right? Based on what we see here from QB1 and QB2. And then when you get to QB5, right? Because if those 4 names are the top 4, then you get to QB5 and you're like, wow, there's a ton of guys. But Javier Santana got 16% of the total vote for QB5. It almost seems like that's your go-to QB5 right there. So appreciate all the interaction with you guys on that. The running back one is still out there. There's only 21 votes so far on the running back one. So again, I would encourage you guys to go to the debate channel. I'm not going to go over those results yet because there's only 21 results in so far. But go to the debate channel and find that form. And it's top 5 running backs, and then it's for the community. And you can go on there and you can vote for who you think the top 5 running backs are. And please, guys, don't be stupid. Don't go in there and pick running back 1, Darnell Hodge, running back 2, Darnell Hodge, running back 3, Darnell Hodge. I'm going to see it. And if you are the person out there that for the top 5 quarterbacks, you put quarterback 1, Cinco Cardenas, quarterback 2, Cinco Cardenas, quarterback 3, Cinco Cardenas, quarterback 4, Cinco Cardenas, quarterback 5, Cinco Cardenas. If that was you, guess what? Your results don't matter. They've been deleted. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. Okay? Don't be ridiculous, guys. A lot of you were excited about the coaches poll and excited about the coaches ranking of positional players. So I thought, let's give you guys the opportunity to get involved. Why should the coaches have all the fun? Right? Why not give you guys the opportunity to vote on it as well? But don't be that guy. Don't be the guy who votes for the same person. And not only votes for the same person, but votes for the person who isn't worthy of even being in the top 5. If that's what you guys are going to do, then I'm just going to limit the amount of selections. I just won't put guys like that as an option because clearly they're not going to get a high percentage of the votes. You can go to the running back, top 5 running backs in the committee vote, and there are I think there's like 25 different running backs, somewhere close to 25 different running backs that you can choose from. But I don't want to see, I don't really want to see anyone vote for Elijah Swan as a top 5 running back. I don't want to see anyone vote for, give me another one here, Nathaniel Booker or Javon Berryhill. Like, even if you put Darnell Hodge at 1, if you put Javon Berryhill at 5, I'm probably going to delete your vote. Because that just shows to me that either you're a TCU homer or you just don't know what you're talking about. I want you guys to have fun with this. That's the whole point. But at the same time, I want it to be realistic. And I don't want the fact that TCU has 15 submitted players to ruin the vote for everyone else because they're just voting for their guy. Take a step back, guys. Yes, have fun with it, but be realistic. Do you really think that that player is the number 1 running back? Do you really think that he's worthy of being the number 5 running back? Don't put the same guy in all 5 positions. I get notified and I just delete it. But please, guys, go in. I think I've seen some more responses come through just now. So I appreciate that. But go into the debate channel, find the top 5 running back community poll, and be sure to go in there and give a rundown of who you think your top 5 running backs are. And then we'll get you out of here in a couple of minutes. One last chance. Special shout out and thanks to Rohan, producer Rohan in the back, helping me out with all these comments tonight, finding the good ones. We'll try to get a couple last minute good ones here. What do we got? Rohan, you see anything good? If anyone has any questions before we get you out of here, game you're excited to watch this weekend that isn't on Monday. You know what? I haven't sat down and scoured the schedule, so let's just do it real quick here. Let's see, week 7. If I had to say, Baylor, West Virginia is a big one for me. Obviously we talked about Texas and wait a minute. I'm looking at, that's week 8. Baylor, West Virginia is a big one. I think, you know what is surprisingly an interesting matchup is Penn State versus LSU, because both of those teams received votes in the coaches poll top 10. LSU received 1 vote as the number 10 team, and Penn State received 1 vote as the number 10 team. So that means there's already one coach out there that thinks Penn State is a top 10 team and a different coach out there that thinks LSU is a top 10 team. And this week, those 2 teams go against each other, which means one of them is going to win, which means there's a decent chance that if 2 or even, if 2, maybe even 1 of the teams currently in the top 10 lose this week, that Penn State or LSU, whoever wins that game, could work their way into the top 10. And I don't think that is anything that we were anticipating this late in the season. We are basically past the midway point. Well, we're pretty much Saturday afternoon at like 6:30 will be the midway point of the season. And I don't think anybody anticipated Penn State and LSU in the discussion for top 10 teams in the country. So that's a big one for me, Penn State and LSU. I haven't had a chance. If anyone knows, when is that Penn State LSU game? Throw that in the chat for everyone to see. Penn State and LSU. That's a game that you guys will want to watch because I'd be willing to bet that one of those teams, whichever team wins that game, works their way into the top 10. Remember that right now. Remember I said that. Whoever wins that Penn State LSU game works their way into the top 10 next week. The UNC Miami game, that's big time. It's big time because look, I've said it. Miami has not looked good their last 3 games they played. The bye week could not have come Sunday at 6:00. Great time slot there. Great time slot. Prime time Sunday night, LSU, Penn State. And then the Miami UNC game. Look, Miami hasn't looked great. UNC has been a little inconsistent as well. But is this the week that Miami finally, collapses and can't come back? Is this the week that they bounce back and win in a fashion that we have come to expect them to win, which we've been let down throughout the season so far? That's another big one to watch. And then lastly, I would say give me Oklahoma and TCU. I think that's, certainly a big game for the Big 12, but also I think a big game for Alan Mourning at Oklahoma. Entering the season, he was a big quarterback prospect. So those are the games for me. I would say Oklahoma, TCU, UNC, Miami, and then Penn State and LSU. If I can't take the chalk game of West Virginia and Baylor, that's where I would go there. Appreciate the time, guys. As always, special shout out to everyone in the chat. Michael Smith Jr., Darius Hodge, Miles McCain, there you are. Lito Loso, Beta Brothers, love you, buddy, even though I roasted you earlier. Killian Bain, Alvin Mack, Tyreek Fitz, what's going on? I did see your message earlier. Eric Ashley, Super Cam, Kennard Rodon. Welcome to the potty, pal. Special shout out to all of you guys for your participation and activity today. And what am I looking at here? Sorry, I'm looking at some stuff. Yeah, we're pretty good. So RFL podcast going on 8:30 right now. So be sure to go on, head over and check that out to see the official top 25 as we head into week 7. Until next time, I am your host, Chris Dunn, head coach and general manager of the Sacramento Miners. Be sure to tune in next week, 7 p.m. Eastern time, for another episode of Miners Live. Until then, take care, everybody.